Hi, this is Michael Smith, and we are talking today about chapter 11 of the textbook, in which we deal with relationships and how they work in an emerging and established and even a middle adulthood. This is probably the thing that's most important in those years, and we have had recent studies that have shown that success or longevity or living longer has to do much more with having companionship and having people around you than it is to live alone. People that live alone tend to die earlier, and so it's better to have relationships. And so these relationships are something that we want to talk about in detail. We've talked a little bit about what that looks like in adolescence, and of course, we realize that in adolescence and the emerging adulthood, that the person is without their cerebral cortex being fully developed, so they have some problem making decisions, making wise decisions, and so that explains a great deal about how we some of the problems that we encounter as parents, and some of you may have been there, done that, got the T-shirt, but it also explains why we're that way if we're in that younger group, when you struggle a little bit with making, some people they pick, and the sad thing is that most of our lasting relationships, like for a mate, marriage, all those things, happen during that time when your uh, cerebral cortex is not fully developed, and your wisdom and your risk factor is high, and your common sense may be a little bit lower. And so I think that explains why some of this is a little bit disconcerting, is because at the time we need it the most, we haven't really developed all the things that we need. So waiting till later in life might be defended by that, in other words. And so we want to talk about those relationships a little bit more today. So let me go to our slides, and we'll look at those, and will give us a little bit of direction here as far as where we want to take our studies today. I hope you are gaining something from the studies that will be helpful to you in the way of living your life, but also in your, of course, in your careers, in your home life, all those different kinds of things. These things tend to come up over and over, and to be of some singular importance. By the end of this chapter, we're going to describe the characteristic patterns of friendship and adult love relationships. We're going to look at the differences in adult relationship lifestyles, differences in family life, family forms, parental roles, and the social customs of divorce and remarriage. And I think we've got a lot on our plate today to deal with. So let's talk about relationships. What types are there, and what are the issues? We don't normally think of these things, and so it's probably relatively new to you. The key questions first we want to look at are: what role do friends play in adulthood? How do they develop? What characteristics do love relationships play, and how do they vary across cultures? And what is the nature of violence in some relationships? Those are all pretty pertinent questions. There are three broad themes of adult friendships. There is the affective and emotional basis of friendship. It refers to our self-disclosure, our expressions of intimacy, appreciation, affection, support. All of those are based on trust and loyalty and commitment. So when you think about that, this is the things that go into your friendships. We love our friends, we appreciate our friends, we support our friends, but it's based on trust and loyalty and our commitment to them. It's very difficult when you have an old friend to break that trust and that loyalty. The shared or the communal nature of friendship reflects how friends participate in and support activities. You do things of mutual interest. You go to ball games, you go to movies, you meet up for lunch. All of those things are communal kind of activities that helps to build a friendship. It's amazing that, you might be separated from that friend for 20 years, and you get back together and go to lunch in 30 minutes, you're caught up, and it's just like you've never been apart. So that's that communal nature. Sociability and compatibility dimensions are important with our friends, because we like to entertain. We use, have amusements and fun and recreation together. That's very much a part of the average friendship. Friendship quality is the satisfaction you get from that relationship. You value your friends, you enjoy the activities you do together, you enjoy talking on the phone together or texting, or whatever it is you do. And with online friendships, it's a little bit more difficult. Trust is important. and reputation and performance, all those other things we've talked about, pre-commitment, because self-disclosure online is a little bit more difficult because people lie and they cheat and they tell stories. And you have all those things when we talk about meeting through a dating service, for instance. The picture people put up may not be them, or they may tell you things about themselves that aren't true, where they work and all that kind of stuff. So those are things that we have to deal with. And that's one of the major differences in an online environment as opposed to a face-to-face or somebody you grew up with that you know their story, because even face-to-face people can lie about their facts of their life. Adult friendships tend to follow a natural course, and they start out from shared interest. Shared interest is the common single factor that works in a friendship. Friendships are important across adulthood because life satisfaction is strongly related to quality and quantity of contact with our friends. You can go through the world and become a millionaire and be shut off from everybody else. You don't have the same life satisfaction as you do when you have friends to share it with. Men's and women's friendships are both based on some of the same things: geographic proximity, similarity, inclusion, symmetrical reciprocity. All of those things are big words that basically say that you live near each other, you're similar to each other, you're inclusive in the things that you like, and there is some give and take in that relationship that makes it worthwhile. Men-based friendships on shared activities and interest, and women are more likely to self-disclose or to co-ruminate. That is, men will go play golf together. Women like to sit down and have lunch and chat and share things of interest. Cross-sex relationships may be hard because of misconceptions. Men and women don't normally communicate as well together as two men would or two women would, and so it causes some problems. In a love relationship, Steinberg's theory or model was that there were three basic components of love. There's passion, and that is the intense physiological desire for someone. There is intimacy, the feeling that you can share all of your thoughts and actions with one another. And there's commitment, the willingness to stay with a person through good and bad times. That goes to our wedding ceremony. If you remember, you promised to love, honor, and obey in sickness and in health, and in wealth, poverty and wealth, till you both should part. And that's a very intimate part of that. I was thinking last week about a wedding. As a pastor, you do lots of weddings. Probably I've done 1,000 weddings in my life, but there was one particular one that struck me in thinking about this relationship. The young lady's father was in the hospital dying of cancer, and they brought him by ambulance to the church so he could be there for his daughter's big day. And so, I mean, they had spent thousands on this wedding and money, flowers, everything, everywhere. And we get down to the ceremony where you say, do you promise to love, honor, and obey your husband? And the girl stopped. We've been over the wording. This wasn't new to her. I think she just wanted to make a scene, but she stopped the ceremony and said, I will not obey him. And so stop the ceremony. You can't go on. Where do you go from there? Her father collapsed. They had to take him back to the hospital. He died that night. And the whole thing was a total disaster. But apparently, in this process of love relationships, you have to think about the things that you will do for the person you're marrying that you might not do for anybody else on the planet. My mother and dad were married 38 years. In my dad's final days with a brain tumor, my mother waited on him hand and foot. She said, you do that with people that you've lived 38 years with because you know them and you love them and you care about them. So it's a growing thing. Couples are happier when each feels the same type of love to a similar degree. And the longer a relationship lasts, the lower you have physical intimacy and passion, but the greater you have of emotional intimacy and commitment. Think about that. That's a great statement. Let me read that to you again. The longer a relationship lasts, the lower its physical intimacy and passion. Those things will fall away, but the greater is emotional intimacy and commitment. So, when somebody's been married 70 years, I had the oldest married couple in South Carolina in my church. They had been married 71 years, and they were so cute together. You would have thought they were newlyweds because they were just so pretty. They were in their 90s, and they were so precious with each other and so gentle and kind. And it wasn't just a put on; it was always that way. And so, as you get older, that there's something that replaces, the physical looks and all the other things that go along with that, and it's really good. So love through adulthood, the early stages of romance are when passion is high and intimacy and commitment are lower. This is also a time when affirmative consent, which requires the assurance that all involved in sexual encounters are informed, autonomous, otherwise capable of making a valid choice regarding engaging in sexual activity, is particularly important to prevent sexual assault. So in early ages of, early days of an association, there's a lot more that needs to be verbally said and actions done, and especially in sexual encounters, that before, not within the bonds of commitment and marriage and all those other things is a little bit different. But before that, depending on what position you take on sexual activity, either before marriage or after, and that's a big deal. That's a big discussion among religious people that sex should be reserved for marriage. But we'll talk about that another day. Assortative mating is a theory that states that people find partners based on their similarity to each other. I would probably argue against that in some sense, because I swear that more people that are opposite to each other get married than people that are similar. But homogamy is the degree to which people are similar, greater when couples meet through school or a religious setting. You meet people you go to church with, so you already pretty well agree on the religious stuff, or you go to school together, so you're both Crimson Tiger fans or whatever. You already have a higher degree of similarity and likes than the normal person would. In the state of South Carolina, it is so funny when a Clemson Tiger fan dates and marries a Carolina Gamecock fan, you would think the world would end. And sometimes in order to have a marriage, they just don't discuss football because they're not similar on that. So it would have been a whole lot less painful to just marry the Clemson Tiger and been done with it. So love through adulthood, speed dating, online dating, we've mentioned this in passing. Speed dating has become very popular, and online dating is also very common. But physical attractiveness strongly affects the partner selection online and offline. Context by pictures, and those have to be real. So there's all kinds of different sexual orientations having hookups and all kinds of things that are done now through media, and 3/4 of the people who engage in that eventually express some degree of regret for doing that, especially if hooked up for just casual sex. They're sorry as they get older that they did that when they were younger. Cultural effects. In a study of 37 cultures worldwide, men and women in each culture displayed unique ordering of their preferences in choosing a mate. Two main dimensions emerged: either emphasis on cultural values, traditional values, emphasize chastity, homemaking in women, ambition, industry, financial prospects in men. But this is less true for Western cultures. These would be Eastern cultures, things that they vary. Relative importance of education, intelligence, social refinement versus pleasing disposition does not vary by gender, but it does vary by culture. So not much difference between men and women in these feelings, but culture it does. Nearly all cultures place importance on love and attraction, and that's important. Love is a function of biophysiosocial forces. Now that's a big word, right? The biology, the psychology, and the social forces. Love is a distinct neurological emotional system with different stages of love, involves different neurochemicals. Erickson and his model believed that mature love is impossible without the capacity for intimacy. That is, really loving someone without the intimate part. Additionally, the kinds of relationships you saw and experienced as a child affect how you define and act in relationships you develop as an adult. This is another one of those things that modeling in the younger years children seeing their mom and dad in love, holding hands, kissing, whatever, is a model for them in later life, that they understand people that love each other do those things and care about each other, and they watch everything. They're little sponges, and their marriages may never be any stronger than what they saw in their mom and dad's marriage. That's a really sad thing. So you need to be careful what you model in front of your kids. What about violence in relationships? Abusive relationships are relationships in which one partner becomes violent or aggressive toward the other. I will add to that sometimes it takes two to tangle, that they're both abusive. Yeah, I have seen situations where both partners were abusive to each other. Battered spouse syndrome, as it doesn't say battered wife, it says battered spouse. I have known some men who were the abusers on their wives. I have known a few women who abused their husbands. But the battered spouse syndrome is a situation where the spouse or the partner believes they can't leave an abusive situation and may go as far as killing their abuser. They don't feel like they can get out of it. Aggressive behavior is a continuum. Please note this. This is very important. It starts with verbal aggression, words. It proceeds to physical aggression, then to severe physical aggression, and will end up in murder. For years, as a pastor, I lived under this guise that pastors would never encourage a woman that was being abused to leave her husband. They would say, well, if you stay with him, you might win him and change him and all this stuff. I have never seen that happen in 66 years, but I have seen that aggression increase to the point of murder. So if your husband is beating you, or if your wife's beating you, or if your partner's beating you, it doesn't have to be a heterosexual situation. If you're being abused verbally, realize it's going to increase, and it's going to end up with you getting killed. And staying with them for your children's sake is not a good reason to get killed. Very important. Causes are numerous and complex as that severity increases. It could start with finances. Maybe the partner drinks. Maybe the partner does drugs. All kinds of different things. Violence against women worldwide often reflects cultural traditions, beliefs, and values of patriarchal societies. That is true, but it goes far beyond that. In most other countries, we do have a problem with spousal abuse in America, but it's much worse in other countries. Women are considered property. They're not allowed to go out in public without a male minder, those kind of things. And that is a form of abuse. It may be a religious custom, but when a woman has to keep her body covered and wear a burqa where she can't see where she's going, then what kind of life does she have? So, what are the challenges and advantages of being single? Why do people cohabit, and what is marriage like across adulthood? In the United States, about 50% of all households are headed by people who aren't married. Think about that. There are numerous biases against single people, especially women. The decision to never marry is often a gradual one, and having a strong friendship network is a major source of emotional and other support for singles. So if you're single, having friends greatly helps you. But as you get older and go through the different stages of the lifespan, it gets more and more lonely. As we said before, there are 3 marking points where loneliness takes a major toll: the 20s, 50s, and the 80s. And you really do get this feeling of being totally alone. And it's not pleasant. I can tell you that from experience. I'm 66, never been married. And I feel that more today than I've ever felt it before, that it's really difficult when you are, getting older and you realize I'm going to be left with nobody. As your family dies off and goes away, you realize that singleness may not be a good thing. Cohabitation, living together, is when people are committed, intimate, sexually relationship, live together, but are not married. It's becoming much more common across age groups, especially for the millennials and especially for older adults. Globally, it differs by culture, but generally levels have increased drastically. on average, cohabiting couples have less relationship satisfaction and are less trusting of their partner. Think about that. If you're living with someone and not without marriage, you have less relationship satisfaction and less trusting. Reasons for cohabitation include love and companionship. It can also include finances or convenience. There are a lot of young people around the world that are waiting for them to get their career job before they think about getting married. So they just live together, stay together. So as you think about that, there's some great activities you could work on there. So marriage, let's talk about marriage. I have done probably 1,000 weddings. So I guess I'm a semi-expert on that, but most adults eventually want their relationships to end in marriage, but rates are declining. Age at first marriage is now about 31 for men and 28 for women. That doesn't always equate a negative side, as we've talked about with the need for your cerebral cortex to mature, to make serious decisions. That's probably a good age. Now, the complication is that the older you get for having children, the more complications you have there. It's not a good idea to have children over 40 years old. So you basically have about a 10-year window, or 12-year window if you're 28, if you married late, to have your children. So that's something to think about. Marital quality is a valuation of the couple's relationship. Marital adjustment is the degree to which the spouses accommodate each other over a certain period of time. A pastor friend of mine who did far more numbers of weddings than I have said that he would tell his couples, don't even think about divorcing for a year. It will take you a year to learn to live with each other, to adjust to the things that you need to adjust to. And then there's marital satisfaction, which is the assessment of one's marriage. So basically, those are very much the same. To be married, like being friends, you should have a similar values, similar interests. You're honest, you're committed, you trust each other, and then it's important to. And so each partner contributes something to the relationship, and the other should be hard pressed to provide something as well. So what is the commitment to marriage? Some people say, well, it should be 50-50. That's not true. Marriage commitment should be 100-100. If you're going to put anything into something, do it 100%, both of you. So it would be 100 for him, 100 for the other partner. And so that's really, really important to think about. Do marriage couples stay happy? Satisfaction in marriage and cohabitation is highest in the beginning, falls until children begin leaving home, and then rises again in later life. So that's what it looks like. When dependence is more equal, marriage tends to stay stronger and close well. The vulnerability stress adaptation model says that marital quality is a dynamic process resulting from the couple's ability to handle stressful situations in the context of their particular vulnerabilities and resources. To put that in English, it means the longer you stay together, the more mountains you cross, the more hurdles you go through, the more financial problems you deal with, the more sicknesses you work with, the more loss of family that you live through together, that you have this shared narrative that ensures that your marriage is better off than one that's not. Does that make sense? You're going to go through some things in the married life. It's not going to be a picnic. I mean, that marriage day looks so happy and so, advantageous, but then you got to wake up the next morning to the bills of what you just spent for a wedding, and you got to work out how we're going to pay for these and what are we going to do. So basically what I'm saying is you're going to have to continue to work every day to keep the happiness in your marriage. And you look back to that wedding day as the happiest day of your life. And then you work until, you keep just putting the same amount of energy into it every day from both sides. And that's all it takes is for one of the couple to get discouraged and give up. And then that's the end of it. Okay, so setting the stage, early years of marriage, start out adoring each other, focus on positive. It's important for happiness, and disillusionment is an important predictor of marital satisfaction. Try to ward that off as long as you can. There's always going to be a time that comes in which you're going to be disillusioned. But he promised me that he'd be, have 130,000 a year by now. You're going to be disillusioned. We're going to have a house at the lake by now, disillusioned. So you got to deal with that as part of this process. So what's it like to be a parent, and what form of parentings are there? There is a nuclear family, which is parents and children. That's common in most Western societies. Extended family would be parents, children, grandparents, other relatives living together. Most common form of family around the world. You'll have large family units. America doesn't do that very much. Often the decision to be a parent is not explicit. It doesn't usually involve analytical thinking. Older parents are more at ease, affectionate, sensitive, and supportive, and they decide whether to have children. Couples are having fewer children and waiting longer to have them, an increased number, and are choosing to remain child-free, mainly because of what's going on in the world and their disappointment over that. Finances are a large concern for those that choose to become parents. The last time I heard, and I'm sure it's much more now, but it took $100,000 a year to get a baby from birth to its 18th birthday and ready for college. So it is an expensive proposition. So you can read a little bit about that as you read through your writing. Okay, parental role. Again, you have help with that. You have all kinds of people that will help you in your family. Some make it worse, so you have to kind of judge your witness from that between the two. Then there's always diversity. We have lots more interracial families now than we've had before. Ethnic and racial backgrounds are very important. It's important that if you're raising a multi-ethnic child, that they have social challenges not experienced by the parents of the same race children, that you find them some help, because you may not understand exactly what's happening with them. But diversity can take many different forms, and be sure to read through all of this, the different forms of adoption and ownership of children. Divorce and remarriage. Last time I heard, we have about 50% of those that are married get divorced. 50% chance of divorce, but rates have been declining, which is good news. 2000 and hit a 50-year low in 2020. So couples tend to agree on reasons why they divorce: money, infidelity, incompatibility, drinking, drug use, partner abuse, most common reasons, children. So Gottlieb and Levinson developed two models designed that prevent divorce early and later based on communication styles. Be sure you read this about communication. I'm not going to read that to you because it's kind of involved, but I want you to read it. Talk about who gets divorced: people that, just basically quit working on their relationships and let other things, take the place. There's a lot of grief that goes with it, a lot of discouragement, and I would encourage you get some help, get some counseling help if you have to go through that, because it is quite hard to deal with. Remarriage is an option, of course. They have a slightly higher rate of divorce than original marriages due to the stress of adapting to new relationships in the marriage. That's important. And then, of course, you think through these things we've talked about, and maybe you're not married, so you don't have to necessarily think about that, or you're not divorced, or you're not getting remarried, but maybe you're single. So we kind of all fit into one of those categories. You need to go back and reassess that, relook at it, and reconsider if there's some things there that you need to learn for this action. And I do appreciate you tuning in to chapter 10. And as we move through these final chapters of the text, this is a really good book, as I've told you. There are lots of things here for your benefit. So I hope that you will make the effort to read it and understand it. And I think you'll be really glad that you did once you've done that, because it's really a swell book, and I think it's well worth your effort and your time to do that, to get the good out of it. Well, thank you for today. I will see you next time. And until then, take care.